Hey there, it's Becky here. I am back with another quick tip for you. Today I just wanted to take a few moments to talk to you about child's pose. It's funny, just about everybody I work with loves this pose. They just don't have complaints, really that many complaints about it, but every once in a while I do work with somebody who's like, I don't like that pose. And usually you dislike the poses that you need even more, unless there's an injury that you really need to avoid. If you have a real dislike of a pose, often it's a hint that you need it for some reason or another. But it is fun. This is a pose that just about everybody likes. So I'm just going to walk you through child's pose for just a moment, and a quick tip for you. If you're ever in a yoga class that I'm not teaching, or whoever is teaching, it doesn't really matter. If you need a break, go to child's pose. It is a resting pose. It is a great place to just pause for a moment, catch your breath, notice your body, and it can feel very soothing. There are a lot of variations that you can do in this pose. So I'm not going to go through them all today, but I am going to talk about just a couple of variations for you that you can try in this pose. And when you shift just a little bit, it does feel different in your body. So I'm sitting on my feet, and we're gonna start, actually I'm gonna come up onto my hands and knees for a moment here. So I have people get into child's pose from various positions, but from hands and knees, you're just going to take your hips back to your heels and then let your upper body release down to the floor. Now I automatically widen my knees. This is the version I like most. I like to have those knees wide and rest my upper body in between those legs. Now, I do know some people who prefer to have those knees together and rest on top. It does make it a very different pose. So, do what you want. If you were always doing it one way, maybe try the other way and see how it feels. I'm gonna have my knees wide and let my upper body release down. So I've got my head on the floor, hips back towards my heels. And this is a pose that you can stay for several minutes. Again, it is a resting pose. So I'm going to come out of it to talk to you, but staying in this pose is perfectly fine to stay here for a couple of minutes. I often have people in class do it for several minutes. You are going to stretch out your hips, you stretch out your back. It's a great pose to help stretch out all the tissue in those knees. A lot of people I work with, they look more like this with their tailbones lifted instead of all the way back to their feet, and that's okay. It just means that you can't get quite as deep into it. So I did promise you a couple of variations. My hair is getting in the way, but I did promise you a couple of variations. So 2 variations are the knees wide and the knees together. Another version that you can do, I often have people do, is to take your hands over to the side of your mat, and that will bring in a little bit of stretch to the side of the body while you're also stretching the hips in the back. Let's take some deep breaths here. And then walk your hands over to the other side of the mat, because you want to get both sides. I've talked before about side bending. We don't do it enough, and this is a form of a side bend to get into the side of your body. So child's pose, variation. And coming back to the center, I'm going to lift up, and I want to show you one other thing, a tip for you if your ankles are tight. I've worked with quite a few people who don't point their toes very often. If you can see, when I sit on my feet, I do this quite a bit. This doesn't bother me unless I sit here for 5 minutes, then my feet fall asleep. But otherwise, sitting like this doesn't really bother my ankles. A lot of people, though, I've worked with, when they go into the pose, it's hard for me to do, but they look more like this, where their ankles are, they're just so tight, the tops of the ankles are tight, so getting them to open up even more is painful. There's an easy fix for this. I have a yoga blanket here, but if you don't have a yoga blanket, don't worry about it. What you can use is a towel. You can roll up a towel, a hand towel even, but what you want to do is put a little support under those ankles. So I'm going to roll up my yoga blanket just a little bit. It doesn't really need to be rolled up all the way. And then I'm going to place it underneath those ankles. I'm trying sideways on my mat so you can see. I've supported underneath those ankles now. And if you are one of those people who cannot point your foot as much as I can, I've got a fix for you. You can always put that underneath your ankles and then release down that way, and it completely takes the stress off of those ankles. I've gotten quite a few people into this pose simply by putting a little bit of support under your ankles. So tips, tricks are always handy. If you are not comfortable in a pose, you're not going to stay there. You're not going to get the benefits out of it. That's just a quick one. If your ankles are not loose, put something underneath them. Doesn't take a lot. Again, I didn't roll this blanket up all the way. I just rolled it up a little bit. Most people don't need a lot. Just a little bit would be enough. So child's pose. It's a rest pose. It's something that you can do every day. It's good for your body. It's good for your hips. It's good for your brain. Helps slow things down. We all need a little bit more rest in our lives. So that's it for today. That's child's pose. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Leave me a comment. I'll happily send a response. If you need extra help with this pose or with another pose, reach out to me. I do work online and I do work in person. So if you're not local to me, I can still work with you online. Happy to help you figure out how to do the pose safely for you. But that's it for today. Remember, it doesn't take a lot, and it's never too late to live happier and healthier. It's just take that first step. That's all you have to do. So bye for now, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.